money in the bank, then you could spend it. They never thought about, and my mom was this way. So my mom would see what would be equal to a pair of Jimmy Choos, and she would just go buy them. My mom had shoes in the 1960s of every single color, dyed to match her clothes. Well, when she got to be older, she had no money left. And so I learned from what she did to be the opposite. And I like to live well, but I work really hard. But I also know that if I don't have a plan for my money, that it isn't going to take care of me. My favorite book for small business people to read, I love Susie Orman's Early Stuff, because she talks about cherishing your money and your money will take care of you. And that leads me to having a business. You need to have a plan for your business that encompasses your money. And as photographers, that encompassing includes a business plan, some kind of budget, pricing. Most of us as photographers, especially in a tough economy, think that we're going to just go out and work our butts off, and like you were saying, you're great at sales, but there's more to sales. There's more to pricing than just saying 4 times the cost of goods sold. There's a lot that goes into those numbers. And so my background is not just QuickBooks. QuickBooks is a great tool to taking you to understanding all the financial aspects of money that will lead to keeping some and having some. Because I don't think that there's necessarily a long life. I don't think you can be a photographer until your 80s or 90s. And our life expectancies are into 80s, 90s, and even over 100. So if we don't take care of ourselves now in our 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, then what's going to happen to us when we're 70, 80, or 90? So part of what we work for today is to have that for later. And how do we do that if we don't have a plan to get there? If we don't track our numbers to get there? And if we don't have a clear sense of what our businesses are about? So that includes coming to something like this and passing on Kenneth and Kevin Kubota's latest action pack, and passing on the latest gadget that everybody else is telling you that they like. You have to have a plan for all of those things. You have to have a plan to go out and market your business. Because if you're just out there randomly waiting for the internet, it's not going to happen. Putting that business plan together to get your business from startup stage to the next stage. And most big people had them for their companies in order to get venture capital. Well, photographers, there's no venture capital. Small businesses, very rare unless you have a huge product that someone's going to invest in your business for a portion of it to take you to that next $1 million level. We are not going to be Apple. Maybe somebody will have a great idea that they'll be able to market. I saw a bunch of small companies today on the trade show floor that had great ideas. But you have to have money in which to move your business to the next level, and you have to plan it. So that's a big part of my philosophy. When I left banking, I couldn't afford to open a bank, but I could afford to open a bookkeeping business. And because I had all that other background, I went out and I got licensed to do tax in the state of California. And I worked with entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs have no corporate background. They have a skill. They have creative ideas. Some photographers, like there's one I'm working with that was an attorney. A lot of people come from corporate backgrounds. I kind of notice in my thinking that there's almost 2 camps of people who become photographers. There's people who are really into the technical, they're engineers, or they're professionals, and they have all the math aspects of photography. They're very technical. And then there's the other side of the coin where they're real creative people. They have an eye, they have a talent, They know how to use the camera, but the techniques of it, they don't care about. They don't care about all the inner workings of what their lens needs to do to get this picture. I don't care about those things. I'm not a measure baiter, as they call that. So there's kind of two camps. Most of my working career since I've opened my bookkeeping business has been with creatives or professionals. A lot of people think, well, like attorneys, their business is all down. Attorneys are very notorious for not having a lot of really strong business skills. They're there to practice law. Most photographers are there. They want to be good shooters. They want to get all the technical stuff down. They want to be out there shooting. They don't want to be creating business plans. They don't want to be doing their QuickBooks stuff. That's the last thing that they want to do. And I find, even for myself, it's hard now. So the more I develop my photography work, it's harder for me to even sit there and do data entry. I want to be shooting, just like you. I'd rather be shooting or processing. I mean, I left on Friday. I just finished a boudoir shoot. A maternity shoot, and I was so excited by the shoot, I didn't have time to process it before I left for Las Vegas. So, to me, what's really critical is that since we don't want to do those things, we have to plan for those aspects of business that are going to take care of us later on. And some of that is including pricing. How do we price ourselves for profitability? How do we structure our businesses so we're organized to the point where we have that balance that will let us work harder but work smarter so that we're making more money? And so we're planning for our future. So a whole big part of all of that is doing the accounting on a regular basis and understanding what goes into that accounting so that you can move to where you want your business to be. And a lot of us, we don't necessarily even know. Things they change so radically from year to year. Fashion changes, processing changes, computers and technology change. Look what the iPad has done just in the last year and a half to business. Look what the iPhone's done in just the last few years. But we also have to know how much we can spend on some of those technologies, so that comes back to selling and pricing. And it's almost like a circle of what's the core of your business and all the peripheral things of marketing and selling and accounting and dealing with your taxes and dealing if you're big enough to have employees. So all of these things impact business. A real business, in my opinion, we see all the mamarazzis that have their cameras and they know how to shoot, and they go to the park with the mommy group and they take pictures. And there's several schools of thought of what composes a professional photographer. Is that a professional photographer? In my personal opinion, there's components that you need to be professional. You need to have your tax work in line. You need to have you have to have sales tax license. You have to have a business license. If you're doing business as something other than your name, you need to have your fictitious business name or DBA statement. You need to be a corporation. So you need to have all the things in line to be a real business. And if you're big enough and you have employees, you probably want to be incorporated. And that's a whole tax topic in and of itself, because no two things fit any two businesses the same. So I might be an S corporation and that's good for me, but maybe you're married and you have kids and you have a lot of medical bills, and so you may need to be a C corporation so you can cover the tax aspect of having all your medical bills deducted from your first dollar. For you, maybe partnership is a good thing. Husband and wife partnerships are very common. So those are all the little aspects of making a business, having insurance to make sure that if someone gets hurt is a responsibility that not only to protect yourself, but to protect your customer. I mean, it's easy to see an umbrella go flying, and you're on the beach and you're doing a beautiful shoot, and the wind comes up and your umbrella takes everything out and hits a little kid. So that could happen to anybody. So in that protecting yourself down in the road in your future, those things all come into play. How are you going to pay for your insurance if you don't charge enough? How are you going to pay your taxes? That's a huge issue I see over and over and over again with photographers. I just had a wedding referred to me I couldn't do, and it was a Friday night shoot and burn situation. And I put on something on DWF, and somebody sent me a PM that they were going to do the wedding for less than, in Los Angeles, for about $75 an hour. There's no way that you could cover your expenses for that and be continual to do that wedding. To be able to cover all your gas, your cost of your equipment, you have to know what those costs are. I mean, you're talking about shooting with a 24-70 lens. You're talking about shooting with a 5D Mark II or a 1DS Mark III. Those are expensive pieces of equipment. I see moms all the time out there buying this equipment they don't know how to use, but they're going to go out and shoot and call themselves professional photographers. But they may not have all those components to be what I call a real business. And while they might make some money, or the people who run the side businesses that are funding their business, they're not making any money. They will not be in business for 5 years, let alone for 20 or 30 years to be able to fund that retirement plan that's going to take care of them later on. So a big part of my thinking when I teach people about business is you can't think of just today. We have to pay the rent today. We have to be able to get money in to cover our living expenses, but we're not just earning for now. We're earning for later too. And so how do we do that? My biggest tool is QuickBooks. It isn't right for everybody. And I've made a lot of money over the years teaching people how to use it, but sometimes for some people, Quicken is okay. If you're a small business, if you're one person, you can't invoice on it. So if you're doing 10 weddings a year, it might be okay. Will you know your real cost? If it's set up right, you could. I like QuickBooks much better. It has a more multifunction ability. It lets you manage your cost of goods. It lets you manage your orders. It actually even has a really good database that you can actually even set up for product fulfillment. So when you do an invoice, you can actually almost track your products, your deliverables. So you can track your costs, and you can track your delivery by just creating your setup in a certain way. You can track your fixed assets, your cameras, your lenses, if you're using backdrops or flashes or whatever accessories you have, all your costs that go into it. And at the end of the year, you'll know what you've spent. You're not taking shoebox receipts and compiling. Even for some people, Excel is an okay answer, but you have to know. You can't run a business without knowing what your costs are and without knowing what your profit is. And just because there's money in the bank, what about the tax part? If you don't budget for your taxes, that is the #1 killer of small business. I have seen more and more businesses fail because they forgot to put away money to pay their taxes, and they owe the IRS. And once you get in that scheme of where you owe the IRS money, it's next to impossible to dig out, because you're going to save 1/3 to 1/2 of your income to pay your taxes. And if you don't have it, you're constantly trying to catch up. It'll take you years to actually get yourself caught up.